Chapter 6 on Momentariness. At that time again, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, made a request of the Bhagavan, saying, Bhagavan, tell me, Shugata, tell me about the rising and disappearing of the skandhas, dhatus, and ayatanas. In case there is no ego soul, what is it that comes to exist and to disappear? The ignorant who are attached to the notion of rising and disappearing fail to understand the extinction of pain, and thus they know not what nirvana is. Said the Bhagavan, then Mahamati, listen well and reflect well within yourself. I will tell you. Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said, Certainly, Bhagavan, and gave ear to the Bhagavan. The Bhagavan said this to him, Mahamati, the Tathagata Garbha holds within it the cause for both good and evil, and by it all the forms of existence are produced. Like an actor, it takes on a variety of forms, and in itself is devoid of ego soul and what belongs to it. As this is not understood, there is the functioning together of the triple combination from which effects takes place. But the philosophers, not knowing this, are tenaciously attached to the idea of a cause or a creating agency. Because of the influence of habit energy that has been accumulating variously by false reasoning since beginningless time, what here goes under the name of alaya vijnana is accompanied by the 7 vijnanas, which give birth to a state known as the abode of ignorance. It is like a great ocean in which waves fall on permanently, but the deeps remain unmoved. That is, the alaya body itself subsists uninterruptedly, quite free from fault of impermanence, unconcerned with the doctrine of ego substance, and thoroughly pure in its essential nature. As to the other 7 vijnanas, beginning with the manas and manovijnana, they have their rise and complete ending from moment to moment. They are born with false discrimination as cause, and with forms and appearances and objectivity as conditions which are intimately linked together. Adhering to names and forms, they do not realize that objective individual forms are no more than what is seen of the mind itself. They do not give exact information regarding pleasure and pain. They are not the cause of emancipation. By setting up names and forms which originate from greed, greed is begotten in turn, and thus mutually conditioned and conditioning. When the sense organs which seize upon the objective world are destroyed and annihilated, the other things immediately cease to function, and there is no recognition of pleasure and pain, which are the self-discrimination of knowledge. Thus there is the attainment of perfect tranquilization in which the thoughts and sensations are quieted, or there is the realization of the 4 dhyanas, in which truths of emancipation are well understood, whereupon the yogins are led to cherish herein the notion of true emancipation because of the not arising of the vijnanas. But when a revulsion or turning back has not taken place in the alaya vijnana known under the name of the Tathagata Garbha, there is no cessation of the evolving vijnanas. Why? Because the evolution of the vijnanas is depending on this cause, but this does not belong to the realm of the Sravakas, Prajakabhutas, and those who are disciplining themselves in the exercises of the philosophers. As they only know the egolessness of the self-soul, as they only accept the individuality and generality of the skandhas, dhatus, and ayatanas, there is the evolving of the Tathagata Garbha. When an insight into the 5 dharmas, the 3 sabhavahas, and the egolessness of all things is obtained, the Tathagata Garbha becomes quiescent. By causing a revulsion in the continuous development of the graded stages, the bodhisattva may not be led astray in the path of enlightenment by those philosophers who hold different views, thus establishing himself at the bodhisattva stage of achala, immovable. He obtains the paths leading to the happiness of the 10 samadhis, supported by the Buddhas in samadhi, observing the truths of the Buddha which go beyond thought and his own original vows, not entering into the happiness of the samadhi which is the limit of reality, but by means of the self-realization which is not generally gained by the paths of discipline belonging to the Sravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, and philosophers, he obtains the 10 paths of discipline which belong to the noble family of the Tathagatas, and also obtains the knowledge body created by the will, which is removed from the premeditated workings of samadhi. For this reason, Mahamati, let those bodhisattva mahasattvas who are seeking after the exalted truth effect the purification of the Tathagata Garbha, which is known as alaya vijnana. Mahamati, if you say that there is no Tathagata Garbha known as alaya vijnana, there will be neither rising nor the disappearing of an external world of multiplicities in the absence of the Tathagata Garbha known as alaya vijnana. But, Mahamati, there is the rising and disappearing of the ignorant as well as the holy ones. Therefore the yogins, while walking on the noble path of self-realization and abiding in the enjoyment of things as they are, do not abandon working hard and are never frustrated in their undertakings. Mahamati, this realm of the Tathagatagarbha is primarily undefiled and is beyond all the speculative theories of the Sravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, and philosophers, but it appears to them devoid of purity, as it is soiled by these external defilements. This is not the case with the Tathagatas, Mahamati. With the Tathagatas, it is an intuitive experience, as if it were an amalaka fruit held in the palm of the hand. This, Mahamati, was told by me in the canonical text relating to Queen Srimala, and in another where the bodhisattvas endowed with subtle, fine, pure knowledge are supported by my spiritual powers, that the Tathagatagarbha known as the Ilaya Vijnana evolves together with the 7 Vijnanas. This is meant for the Sravakas who are not free from attachment, to make them see into the egolessness of things, and for Queen Srimala, to whom the Buddha's spiritual power was added, the pure realm of Tathagatahood was expounded. This does not belong to the realm of speculation, as it is carried on by the Sravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, and other philosophers, except, Mahamati, that this realm of Tathagatahood, which is the realm of the Tathagatagarbha Alaya Vijnana, is meant for those bodhisattvas who, like you, are endowed with subtle, fine, penetrating thought power, and whose understanding is in accordance with the meaning. And it is not for others, such as philosophers, Sravakas, and Pratyekabuddhas, who are attached to the letters of the canonical texts. For this reason, Mahamati, that you and other bodhisattva mahasattvas discipline yourselves in the realm of Tathagatahood, in the understanding of this Tathagatagarbha, Alaya Vijnana, so that you may not rest contented with mere learning. So it is said, the Garbha of the Tathagatas is indeed united with the 7 Vijnanas. When this is adhered to, there arises duality, but when rightly understood, duality ceases. The mind, which is the product of intellection since beginningless time, is seen like a mere image. When things are viewed as they are in themselves, there is neither objectivity nor its appearance. As the ignorant grasp the fingertip and not the moon, so those who cling to the letter know not my truth. The Sita dances like a dancer, the Manas resembles a jester. The Mana Vijnana, together with the 5 Vijnanas, creates an objective world which is like a stage. At that time, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, made a request of the Bhagavan, saying, Pray tell me, Bhagavan, pray tell me, Shugata, concerning the distinguishing aspects of the 5 Dharmas, the 3 Svabhavas, the 8 Vijnanas, and the twofold egolessness. By recognizing the distinguishing aspects of the twofold egolessness, I and other Bodhisattva Mahasattvas will be able to establish those truths while effecting a continuous development through the various stages of Bodhisattvahood. It is said that by these truths we can enter into all the Buddha truths, and that by entering into all the Buddha truths we can enter even into the ground of the Tathagata's inner realization. Said the Bhagavan, then, Mahamati, listen well and reflect well within yourself. I will tell you. Certainly, Bhagavan, said Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and gave ear to the Bhagavan. The Bhagavan said this to him, Mahamati, I will tell you about the distinguishing aspects of the 5 Dharmas, the 3 Svavahas, the 8 Vijnanas, and the twofold egolessness. The 5 Dharmas are name, form, discrimination, right knowledge, and suchness. When these are thoroughly comprehended by the yogins, they enter into the course of the Tathagata's inner realization, where they are kept away from such views as eternalism and nihilism, realism and negativism, and where they come face to face with the abode of happiness belonging to the present existence, as well as to the samapati, tranquilization. But Mahamati, as the ignorant do not understand that the 5 Dharmas, the 3 Svabhavas, and the 8 Vijnanas, and the twofold egolessness, together with the external objects which are regarded as existent and non-existent, all these are no more than what is seen of the mind itself. They are given to discrimination, but it is otherwise with the wise. Said Mahamati, how is it that the ignorant are given up to discrimination and the wise are not? Said the Bhagavan, Mahamati, the ignorant cling to names, ideas, and signs. Their minds move along these channels. As they thus move along, they feed on multiplicities of objects, and fall into the notion of an ego soul and what belongs to it, and cling to salutary appearances. As thus they cling, there is a reversion to ignorance, and they become tainted. Karma, born of greed, anger, and folly, is accumulated. As karma is accumulated, again and again their minds become swathed in the cocoon of discrimination as the silkworm, and transmigrating in the ocean of birth and death, gati. They are unable, like the water-drawing wheel, to move forward. And because of folly, they do not understand that all things are like Maya, a mirage, the moon in water, and have no self-substance to be imagined as an ego soul and its belongings, that things rise from their false discrimination, that they are devoid of qualified and qualifying, and have nothing to do with the course of birth, abiding, and destruction, that they are born of the discrimination of what is only seen of mind itself, and assert that they are born of Isvara, time, atoms, or a supreme spirit, for they follow names and appearances. Mahamati the ignorant move along with appearances. Further, Mahamati by appearance is meant that which reveals itself to the visual sense and is perceived as form, and in like manner that which, appearing to the sense of hearing, smelling, tasting, the body, and the mana vijnana, is perceived as sound, odor, taste, tactility, and idea. All this I call appearance. Further, Mahamati by discrimination is meant that by which names are declared, and there is thus the indicating of various appearances, saying that this is such and no other, for instance, saying that this is an elephant, a horse, a wheel, a pedestrian, a woman, or a man. Each idea thus discriminated is so determined. Further, Mahamati by right knowledge is meant this: when names and appearances are seen as unobtainable owing to their mutual conditioning, there is no more rising of the vijnanas, for nothing comes to annihilation, nothing abides everlastingly, and when there is thus no falling back into the stages of the philosophers, Shravakas, and Pratyekabuddhas, it is said that there is right knowledge. Further, Mahamati, by reason of this right knowledge, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva does not regard name as reality and appearance as non-reality. When erroneous views based on the dualistic notion of assertion and negation are gotten rid of, and when the vijnana cease to rise as regards the objective world of names and appearances, this I call suchness. Mahamati, a bodhisattva mahasattva who is established on suchness, attains the state of imagelessness and thereby attains the bodhisattva stage of joy, pramodita. When the bodhisattva attains the stage of joy, he is kept away from all the evil courses belonging to the philosophers and enters upon the path of supra-worldly truths. When all the conditions of truth are brought to consummation, he discerns that the course of all things starts with the notion of Maya, etc., and after the attainment of noble truth of self-realization, he earnestly desires to put a stop to speculative theorization, and going up in a succession through the stages of bodhisattvahood, he finally reaches the stage of Dharma cloud, Dharma mega. After being at the stage of the Dharma cloud, he reaches as far as the stage of Tathagatahood, where the flowers of the samadhis, powers, self-control, and psychic faculties are in bloom. After reaching here, in order to bring all beings to maturity, he shines like the moon in water, with varieties of rays of transformation. Perfectly fulfilling the 10 inexhaustible vows, he preaches the Dharma to all beings according to their various understandings. As the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas Mahamati have entered into suchness, they attain the body which is free from the will and thought constructions. Again, Mahamati said, are the three spavavas to be regarded as included in the 5 dharmas, or as having their own characteristics complete in themselves? The Bhagavan said, the 3 spavavas, the 8 vijnanas, and the twofold egolessness, they are all included in the 5 dharmas. Of these, name and appearance are known as the parikalpita, false imagination. Then Mahamati, discrimination which arises depending upon them is the notion of an ego soul and what belongs to it. The notion and the discrimination are of simultaneous occurrence, like the rising of the sun in its rays. Mahamati, the discrimination thus supporting the notion of self-nature which subsists in the multiplicities of objects, is called the paratantra, dependence on another. Right knowledge and suchness, Mahamati, are indestructible, and thus they are known as parajpana, perfect knowledge. Further, Mahamati, by adhering to what is seen of the mind itself, there is an eightfold discrimination. This comes from imagining unreal individual appearances as real. When the twofold clinging to an ego soul and what belongs to it is stopped, there is the birth of the twofold egolessness. Mahamati, in these 5 dharmas are included all the Buddha truths, and also the differentiation and succession of the bodhisattva stages and the entrance of the Sravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, Bodhisattvas, and Tathagatas into the state of self-realization by means of their noble wisdom. Further, Mahamati, of the five dharmas, name, appearance, discrimination, right knowledge, and suchness, appearance is that which is seen as having such characteristics as form, shape, distinctive features, images, colors, etc. This is appearance. Out of this appearance, ideas are formed, such as a jar, and etc., by which one can say, this is such and no other. This is name. When names are thus produced, appearances are determined, and there is discrimination, saying, this is mind, and this is what belongs to it. That these names and appearances are after all unobtainable, because when intellection is put away, the aspect of mutuality in which all things are determined ceases to be perceived and imagined. This is called the suchness of things, and this suchness may be characterized as truth, reality, exact knowledge, limit, source, self-substance, the unattainable. This has been realized by myself and the Tathagatas, truthfully pointed out, recognized, made public, and widely shown. When, in agreement with this, the truth is rightly understood as neither negative nor affirmative, discrimination ceases to rise, and there is the state of conformable to self-realization by means of noble wisdom, which is not the course of controversy pertaining to the philosophers, Sravakas, and Pratyekabuddhas. This is right knowledge. These are Mahamati, the five dharmas, and in them are included the three sabhavahas, the eight vijnanas, the twofold egolessness, and all the Buddha truths. In this Mahamati, reflect well with your own wisdom, and let others do the same, and do not allow yourself to be led by another. So it is said, the five dharmas, the svabhavas, the eight vijnanas, and the twofold egolessness, they are all embraced in the Mahayana. Name, appearance, and discrimination correspond to the first two svabhavas, while right knowledge and suchness are in the parinishpana. At that time again Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said this to the Bhagavan. It is told by the Bhagavan in the canonical texts, the Tathagatas of the past, present, and future are like the sands of the river Ganga. Bhagavan, is this to be accepted literally, or is there another distinct meaning? Pray tell me, Bhagavan. The Bhagavan said, Mahamati, do not take it in its literal sense, for Mahamati, the Buddhas are of the three divisions of time are not measurable by the measurement of the sands of the Ganga. Why? Because an analogy which is superior to anything of the world and surpasses it cannot be called an analogy, since there is in it something resembling and something not resembling. The Tathagatas, Arhats, fully enlightened ones, do not give out such an analogy that has in it something resembling and something not resembling, and that is superior to the world and surpasses it. But this comparison is only given out, Mahamati, by myself and the Tathagatas, in which the Tathagatas, Arhats, fully enlightened ones, are said to be like the sands of the river Ganga. The idea is to terrify those ignorant and simple-minded ones who, tenaciously clinging to the idea of permanency and impermanency, are giving themselves up to the ways of thinking and the erroneous views of the philosophers, follow up the wheel of transmigration. To those who, anxious to escape the intricacies of the wheel of existence, seek after the excellent state, thinking how this could be realized, it is told them that the appearance of the Tathagatas is not like the blooming of the Undambara flower, because they will thereby see that the attainment of Buddhahood is not a difficult undertaking and will put forward their energy. But it is told in the canonical text that the Tathagatas appear as rarely as the Undambara flower, and this is in consideration of those people who are to be led by me. Mahamati, however, no one has ever seen the Undambara flower blooming, nor will anyone. While Mahamati, the Tathagatas are at present in the world, they were seen and are to be seen. To say that the Tathagatas appear as rarely as the Undambara flower really has no reference to the establishment of the truth itself. When Mahamati, the establishment of the truth itself, is pointed out, it surpasses beyond measure anything in the world that can be offered as an analogy to it, because the ignorant are incapable of believing, and thus there is an unbelief on the part of the ignorant and simple-minded. There is indeed no room for analogies to enter into the realm of self-realization, which is effected by means of noble wisdom. The truth transcends all the notions that are characteristic of the Sitas, Manas, and Manovijnana. The truth is the Tathagatas, and therefore in them there is nothing describable by analogy. But Mahamati, sometimes a comparison is made use of, that is to say, the Tathagatas are said to be like the sands of the river Ganga, because they are the same and impartial to all things, because they are free from imagination and discrimination. For example, Mahamati, the sands of the river Ganga are tossed about by the fishes, tortoises, porpoises, crocodiles, buffaloes, lions, elephants, etc., but they are free from imagination and discrimination, For they do not resent, saying, we are downtrodden, or we are not. They are non-discriminative, pure in themselves, separated from defilement. In that same way, Mahamati, the self-realization of noble wisdom which has been attained by the Tathagatas, Arhats, fully enlightened ones, is like the river Ganga, and their powers, psychic faculties, and self-control are like the sands, and however much they are tossed about by the fishes of the philosophers, by the ignorant who belong to other schools, they are not troubled by imaginations and discriminations. Because of their original vows, the Tathagatas, whose hearts are filled with the happiness of the Samapati, are not troubled by imaginations and discriminations with regard to beings. Therefore, the Tathagatas, like the sands of the river Ganga, are free from partiality because of their being devoid of likes and dislikes. To illustrate Mahamati, as the sands of the river Ganga partake of the character of the earth, the conflagration that will break out at the end of the Kalpa may burn the earth but does not destroy its self-nature. Mahamati, the earth, is not consumed because of its being inseparably connected with the element of fire, and it is only the ignorant and simple-minded that on account of their falling into false ideas imagine the earth being consumed by fire. But as it supplies the material cause to the element fire, it is never consumed. In the same way, Mahamati, the Dharmakaya of the Tathagatas, is like the sands of the river Ganga, is never destroyed. To illustrate Mahamati, the sands of the river Ganga are immeasurable. In the same way, Mahamati, the rays of light of the Tathagatas are beyond measure, which are emitted by them in all Buddha assemblies in order to bring beings to maturity and arouse them to the knowledge of the truth. To illustrate Mahamati, the sands of the river Ganga do not assume another nature than itself, remaining forever the same. In the same way, Mahamati, the Tathagatas, Arhats, fully enlightened ones, are neither evolving nor disappearing in transmigration, because in them the cause of making them come into existence is destroyed. To illustrate Mahamati, the sands of the river Ganga are unconcerned whether they are carried away or whether more is added to them. In the same way, Mahamati, the knowledge of the Tathagatas, which is exercised for the maturing of beings, is neither exhausted nor augmented, because the Dharma is without a physical body. Mahamati, that which has a physical body, is subject to annihilation, but not that which has no physical body, and the Dharma is not a physical body. To illustrate Mahamati, the sands of the river Ganga, however much they are compressed for the sake of the ghee and oil, are destitute of them. In the same way, Mahamati, the Tathagatas, never abandon their deep concerns and original vows and happiness as regards the Dhammadhatu, however hard they are oppressed with pain for the sake of beings, as long as all beings have not yet been led into nirvana by the Tathagatas, who are endowed with a great compassionate heart. To illustrate Mahamati, the sands of the river Ganga are drawn along with the flow of the stream, but not where there is no water. In the same way, Mahamati, the Tathagata's teaching in regard to all the Buddha truths, takes place along the flow of the Nirvana stream, and for this reason the Tathagatas are said to be like the sands of the river Ganga. Mahamati, the Tathagata, thus come. In Tathagata, thus come. There is no sense of going away. Mahamati, going away, means destruction. Mahamati, the primary limit of transmigration, is unknown. Not being known, how can I talk of the sense of going away? The sense of going away, Mahamati, is annihilation, and this is not known by the ignorant and simple-minded. Mahamati said, if Bhagavan, the primary limit of transmigration of all beings, is unknowable, how is the emancipation of beings knowable? The Bhagavan said, Mahamati, when it is understood that the objective world is nothing but what is seen of the mind itself, the habit energy of false speculations and erroneous discriminations which have been going on since beginningless time is removed, and there is revulsion or turning back at the basis of discrimination. This is emancipation, Mahamati, and not annihilation. Therefore, Mahamati, there cannot be any talk about endlessness. To be endless in limit, Mahamati, is another name for discrimination. Apart from discriminations, there are no other beings. When all things external or internal are examined with intelligence, Mahamati, knowing and known are found to be quiescent. But when it is not recognized that all things rise from the discrimination of the mind itself, discrimination asserts itself. When this is understood, discrimination ceases. So it is said. Those who regard the removers of obstruction, i.e. Buddhas, as neither destroyed nor departed forever, like the sands of the Ganga, see the Tathagata. Like the sands of the Ganga, they are devoid of all error. They flow along the stream and are permanent. and so is the essence or nature of Buddhahood. At that time again, Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said this to the Bhagavan. Tell me, Bhagavan, tell me, Shugata Tathagata Arhat, fully enlightened one, regarding the momentary destruction of all things and their distinctive signs. Bhagavan, what is meant by all things being momentary? The Bhagavan replied, Then, Mahamati, listen well and reflect well within yourself. I will tell you. Certainly, Bhagavan, said Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and gave ear to the Bhagavan. The Bhagavan said this to him, Mahamati, all things we speak of, and they are good or bad, effect-producing or not effect-producing, of this world or of superworld, faulty or faultless, of evil flowings or the non-flowings, receptive or non-receptive. In short, Mahamati, the 5 appropriating skandhas have their rise from the habit energy of the Shita, Manas, and Mana-Vijnana. They are imagined good or bad. Mahamati, the happiness of the Samadhi and the attainments resulting therefrom, which belongs to the wise by reason of their abiding in the happiness of the existing world, are called non-outflowing goods. Again, Mahamati, by good and bad are meant the 8 Vijnanas. What are the 8? They are the Tathagata Garbha, known as the Alaya Vijnana, Manas, Mana Vijnana, and the system of the 5 Vijnanas as described by the philosophers. Now, Mahamati, the system of the 5 Vijnanas is together with the Mana Vijnana, and there is an undivided succession and differentiation of good and bad, and the entire body moves on continuously and closely bound together. Moving on, it comes to an end, but as it fails to understand that there is nothing in the world but what is seen of mind only, there is the rising of another Vijnana system following the cessation of the first, and the Mana Vijnana in union with the system of the 5 Vijnanas, perceiving the difference of all forms and figures, is set in motion, not remaining still even for a moment. This I call momentariness. Mahamati, momentary, is the Alaya Vijnana known as the Tathagata Garbha, which is together with the manas and with the habit energy of the evolving Vijnanas. This is momentary. But the Alaya Vijnana, which is together with the habit energy of the non-outflows, Anasrava, is not momentary. This is not understood by the ignorant and simple-minded who are addicted to the doctrine of momentariness. Not understanding the momentariness and non-momentariness of all things, they cherish nihilism, whereby they even try to destroy the unmade, asamskrika. Mahamati, the system itself of the 5 Vijnanas, is not subject to transmigration, nor does it suffer pleasure and pain, nor is it conducive to nirvana. But Mahamati, the Tathagata Garbha, is together with the cause that suffers pleasure and pain. It is this that is set in motion and ceases to work. It is stupefied by the fourfold habit energy, but the ignorant do not understand it, as their thoughts are infused with the habit energy of discrimination, which cherishes the view of momentariness. Further, Mahamati, gold, Vajra, and the relics of the Buddha, owing to their specific character, are never destroyed, but remain the same until the end of time. If, Mahamati, the nature of enlightenment is momentary, the wise would lose their wiseness, Aryatva, but they have never lost it. Mahamati, gold, and Vajra remain the same until the end of time. Remaining the same, they are neither diminished nor increased. How is it that the ignorant, failing to recognize the hidden meaning of all things, internal and external, discriminate in the sense of momentariness? Further, Mahamati said, It is said again by the Bhagavan that by fulfilling the 6 paramitas, Buddhahood is realized. What are the 6 paramitas, and how are they fulfilled? The Bhagavan replied, Mahamati, there are 3 kinds of paramitas. What are the 3? They are the worldly, the superworldly, and the highest superworldly. Of these, Mahamati, the worldly paramitas are practiced thus, adhering tenaciously to the notion of an ego soul and what belongs to it, and holding fast to dualism. Those who are desirous of this world of form, etc., will practice the paramita of charity in order to obtain the various realms of existence. In the same way, Mahamati, the ignorant, will practice the paramitas of morality, patience, energy, dhyana, and prajna. Attaining the psychic powers, they will be reborn in Brahma's heaven. As to the superworldly paramitas, they are practiced by the Sravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas whose thoughts are possessed by the notion of nirvana. The paramitas of charity, etc., are thus performed by them who, like the ignorant, are desirous of enjoying nirvana for themselves. Again, Mahamati, as to the highest superworldly paramitas, they are practiced by the Bodhisattva Mahasattvas who are the practicers of the highest form of spiritual discipline. that is, perceiving that there is nothing in the world but what is only seen of the mind itself, on account of discrimination, and understanding that duality is of the mind itself. They see that discrimination ceases to function, and that seizing and holding is non-existent, and free from all thoughts of attachment to individual objects which are of the mind itself. And in order to benefit and give happiness to all sentient beings, the bodhisattvas practice the paramita of charity. While dealing with an objective world, there is no rising in them of discrimination. They just practice morality, and this is the paramita of morality. To practice patience with no thought of discrimination rising in them, and yet with full knowledge of grasp and grasping, this is the paramita of patience. To exert oneself with energy from the first part of the night to its end, and in conformity with the disciplinary measures, and not to give rise to discrimination, this is the paramita of energy. Not to cherish discrimination, not to fall into the philosopher's notion of nirvana, this is the paramita of dhyana. As to the paramita of prajna, when the discrimination of the mind itself ceases, when things are thoroughly examined by means of intelligence, there is no falling into dualism, and a revulsion takes place at the basis, while previous karma is not destroyed. When transcendental knowledge is exercised for the accomplishment of self-realization, then there is the paramita of prajna. These Mahamati are the paramitas and their meanings. So it is said, the created Samskrita are empty, impermanent, momentary, so the ignorant discriminate. The meaning of momentariness is discriminated by means of the analogies of a river, a lamp, and seeds. All things are non-existent, they are not momentary, quiescent, not subject to destruction, and unborn. This, I say, is the meaning of momentariness. Birth and death succeed without interruption. This I do not point out for the ignorant. Owing to the uninterrupted succession of existence, discrimination moves on in the six paths. Ignorance is the cause, and there is the general rising of minds when form is not yet born, where is the abode of the middle existence. If another mind is set in motion in an uninterrupted succession of deaths, where does it find its dependence as form is not established in time? If mind is set in motion somewhere, somehow, the cause is an unreal one. It is not complete. How can one know of its momentary disappearances? The attainment of the yogins, gold, the Buddha relics, and the heavenly palace of Avasvara are indestructible by any worldly agencies. Ever abiding are the truths attained by the Buddhas and their perfect knowledge, the nature of Buddhahood as realized by them. How can there be momentariness in them? The city of the Gandharvas, Maya-like forms, how can they be otherwise than momentary? Realities are characterized with unreality, and how can they be causal agencies? End of chapter 6.